A very warm good morning to you all for race day here at Spa-Francorchamps for the 24 Hours of Spa, the Centenary Edition. And we kick off our support races today with the Fanatec GT European Series powered by Pirelli. Our GT2 cars just about making their way onto the circuit. And it is yet another, would you believe, beautiful day here at Spa with a track temperature of just 18 degrees. It was something like 46 when they raced yesterday. We are, of course, more likely to have conditions that we saw from qualifying yesterday morning than their first race. Track temperature was 46 yesterday during the race, 18 now. That has a big effect on how these cars will react. Interestingly, though, the air temperature is exactly the same as the track right now at 18 degrees. So it is another warm day to get our support race action underway. My name is Ben Constanduris. We're going to have this second race with the pro drivers starting, and alongside me is our pro driver, David Addison.
Does that make you a bronze? It's certainly not
Definitely.
an am, Ben. No, I don't believe that. Morning, everybody. Welcome, as Ben says, to a sunny Spa. There is, from the naysayers, a constant discussion about, there'll be rain for the 24 hours, but let's make the most of this. The circuit, which has been resurfaced and is much faster this year, is in absolutely prime condition, except we've got a drama already for the Audi 88 of Stefano Costatini and his new co-driver, Alfio Andrea Spina. It is Alfio Spina at the wheel, and that's ground to a halt coming out of the pit lane. Not yet, having got to the track at Radion, but it's got going again. Suffered damage in yesterday's race after a turn one skirmish. Yes, we had a little bit of contact at turn one yesterday between three different cars. It was only this one that ended up actually retiring out of the race. The other two, the 98 Motorsport 98 Mercedes, was able to carry on. And trying to remember what the third of those cars were that was damaged. 53 Mercedes, wasn't it?
Yes.
The Gibbon Bourret car that got a lot of rear end damage.
And eventually had to retire because it didn't have any brake lights. That was the problem.
Had broken lights, but not brake lights.
Yes.
So, new to the championship is Alfio Spina, and we'll see how he fares because he didn't get a run yesterday. We've got an ever-increasing number of brands coming into this. We are down to 16 cars for this race, but 17 raced yesterday. The Audi of Attempto Racing had a mechanical drama, and that's withdrawn, which is a shame because we equalled a record grid size. So, this year particularly, there is a lot more optimism, a lot more positivity about the category and its future because the numbers are up, and that's great.
And there are more and more cars out there that aren't necessarily entered into this race but are available to use. We've seen Porsches on this grid before, with no Porsches today. We know that there is a Brabham out there, at least one. We know that there are more Mercedes than entered on this grid. So there is the possibility of a larger grid. In fact, the entry list, the pre-entry list, as you like, was 19 cars. 17 cars turned up, and sadly, just 16 for race two. It did feel as though that Attempto Audi was pretty new to them by the looks of the bodywork. And so I think teething problems, because they didn't qualify in qualifying two anyway, and they retired the car halfway through race one. So I think it's been a couple of issues across the weekend for that car.
But the good news is that we are still in for an interesting race, that's for sure. And of course, this championship always helped in a sense by the fact that if you do well, for the next race, you're liable to do less well because there are extra times to be served in the pit lane. Everybody has to serve a mandatory pit stop time, which is 171 seconds from memory, 161 seconds from memory, and then, if you're in the top three, you carry extra time. So if you win, you get 10 seconds carried into the next race, 7 for second place, and 5 for third. But that is complicated even more, because if you're a soloist, you get a bit of an advantage, because when you're in the car in stint 2, you instantly know what the car feels like and what the track is like, whereas an incoming driver doesn't. So to try and balance that out, it's a longer pit stop if you are on your own, and therefore longer time served.
But interestingly, that penalty doesn't apply to cars that have not been successful. Other series, you would have a 5-second extra time penalty to negate the experience that you've had in the first stint of the race, because it does, especially for an AM driver, take a lap or two to get up to your ultimate pace. And if you're doing the whole race, then you don't have that adaptation period. This race, this series, doesnn't have that sort of, let's say, extra 5 seconds. So it's only if you've been successful that you get slightly more punished for being a single car driver.
So pole position is, for this race, the car that was at the back for yesterday's, number 18 Audi. Pierre Caffer is going to start today. That car yesterday fell off the lead lap in the first stint, but watching Pierre Caffer at work is always a highlight. Now, what he needs to do, and it sounds rather obvious, is just go absolutely flat out and try and build as big a lead as he can for Michael Doppelmayr to protect into the second stint. The last thing they need in either stint is a safety car.
Absolutely. We saw Doppelmayr about, well, just under a lap behind by the time he'd finished his 25-minute stint. So they will be looking at a similar deficit for race 2, which means effectively Pierre has a pretty difficult task, because the idea is if he can get a whole lap on the field, it's not going to happen, but that will help him a lot. There is Pierre Caffer in the car. He sits very high, surprisingly high for me, inside any car, whether it be the GT2 or the GT3 Audi, and he was chatting there with Michael Doppelmayr inside the car of Matto Hommler, who's grown a little bit of facial hair over the last couple of years to show that he's no longer that young World Touring Car driver we once knew.
That car retired yesterday at the very start of Matto Hommer's stint. Petr Lisa, new to the car, replacing Jan Krabec, who had lots of mechanical woes at Misano. He did his stint, and then it expired at the very start of Matto Hommer's stint. Philippe Pret yesterday was the winning AM, and therefore he carries the full compensation time and the extra time for being a soloist. So he's stuck in the pit lane for 14 seconds when we get to the pit window. That's Leonardo Gorini, or Lego for short. Take the LE from Leonardo and the Gio from Gorini. Lego is his brand. Teammate, he drives a number 1 Maserati. Glorious looking cars though, so they sound great as well.
It sounds as though they are have shortened this grid formation. I can hear that the marshals are shouting to clear the grid, but they maybe were slightly late out of pit lane. So there's not a lot. Oh, we do have enough time, though, to go down to the grid and chat with Antonia for the first time today. Good morning, Antonia. You have Michael Doppelmayr with you.
Michael, there are worse places to start than right at the front on a beautiful Spa morning.
Yeah, it's very nice today, and we're going to have a very nice race, very competitive, but I'm looking forward to have a good race.
You said that of this pairing, you feel that you might not be the strongest. What are you going to do in the second stint to try and retain a good advantage?
I just have a bucket full of fun, that's it.
What's it like driving at Spa? Obviously, if fun is your priority, this is the perfect place.
Yes, and Spa is a very nice race course, and it will be a cool day.
Well, I hope you do have fun. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
That's the right attitude, isn't it, for an AM driver? Michael Doppelmayr holding up his hands. He's not as quick as Pierre Caffer. He's not the quickest man on the grid, but he's here to enjoy himself, and that's what this kind of racing is about.
And it's actually not often we get a chance to hear from Michael. He's quite a shy character and likes to always have Pierre be the one as the spokesperson. So well done, Antonia, for getting a few words with him, because that's the attitude of many of our GT2 competitors. They're here to have fun. They're not here to become the next Lewis Hamilton. That's not the point of this championship. They are here to drive incredible cars, and these are incredible cars in incredible circuits, supporting GT3, and as you saw from our title sequence, also make sure you have a good lunch.
Now, there is a mandatory pit stop between the 20th and the 30th minute where you either change drivers or stay in the car. You don't have to have a co-driver. Some of the drivers like it because it's a way of reducing costs. Some like it because maybe they don't feel fit enough to do 2 lots of 50 minutes over the course of the weekend. And some want a second driver because you can have somebody quicker than you, and that's going to help your results. But there are others, like Philippe Pret, who wants the track time. Remember, a year or so ago, 2 years ago rather now, Henri Hassid won the championship by being a soloist and admitted that it was hard work, but he wanted to do it that way. So it's personal preference.
Because also, these cars are more arms and elbows than the GT3 cars and cars with downforce. They move around a lot, and so there is a physicality there to kind of keeping a car at speed, floating around the circuit, in supposed to other championships with less power. You see a lot of gentleman drivers, for instance, in GT4. They move around a lot, but they're a lot slower. These are heavier, faster vehicles. They're actually only a couple of seconds slower around this circuit than the GT3 cars, and equal to what we've seen this weekend in GT1, the Maserati MC12 that is spectacular in our historic celebration of SRO's involvement in the Spa 24 Hours is very, very similar pace to these cars. Here is the grid then. Pierre Caffer and Matto Homola will line up alongside each other on the front row as pro drivers. Simon Birch and Ronald Koffler, the other pros, on third and fourth, 2 KTMs. Then the first of the Lamborghinis, Tamburini in fifth, Heisemans in sixth position, Philippe Pret right in the centre of things in his Lamborghini in seventh, and Spina in eighth spot. Leroy in ninth, the second of the AMs, with Ulber in 10th, another retirement yesterday. Jean-Luc Bobolic will start the 87 Accordes ASP Mercedes, and Vibin alongside him in another of the Mercedes GT2 cars. Angerhofer in 13th, Lawrence Tomlinson in his Ginetta in 14th spot, Boré in 15th, and Hernandez Ortega in the sole Lamborghini. 16 cars with just one retirement out of the weekend, as we mentioned a little bit earlier on. A multitude of different cars. A spectacular morning, lots of grip, although I think they'll experience on these new bits of tarmac quite a different feel to what they had yesterday, because that track temperature is only down at 18 degrees right now.
So many people this weekend have been talking about understeer that's been triggered by the new tarmac, but also people have been saying how nice it is to drive on it and what a nice feel it has, and it kind of shows up rather graphically the difference between the new and the old. You didn't think of Spa as a bumpy circuit, but now, because it's so smooth with the new surfacing, which is about 80% of the lap, there really is a disparity between the old surface and the new.
There's actually a bump coming out of what I would call Stavelot, Curb Full Frere, where the new tarmac joins the old, and there's a little, luckily it's on the exit rather than entry, but even looking at the cadence here into Fagnes, you can start to see there is ripples being formed by the cars using this tarmac, and perhaps because it's so warm, it hasn't had a chance to really seal. But you can see in the braking zones, there is a little bit of rippling effect going on already.
So, for pole position, Pierre Caffer, former Audi factory driver. He has also had a spell racing Ferraris, but like so many career racing drivers, came out of single-seaters. It seems an awful long time ago, though, now, doesn't it, that he was winning in things like Formula Ford. But a very experienced driver is Pierre Caffer. He was the winner of the GT2 class at Le Mans back in 2009 in a Ferrari, and that was even after he'd been an Audi factory driver. Michael Doppelmayr will take over that car. Matto Homola, as Ben was saying a little while ago, former touring car ace of the European and World Touring Car Championships. He's raced in TCR in Benelux and in the Middle East. Second row of the grid, the Razzoon More Than Racing car, Simon Birch, will start that. He's been a regular over the last few seasons in things like the Danish Yokohama Super Cup, in the Le Mans Cup's GT3 class in a Honda NSX, and then coming into GT2 machinery this year, Reinhard Koffler on the outside of that row, Formula Renault, Formula BMW racer, and then had a few years away when the money ran out, but has come back courtesy of KTM, racing both in GT3 and GT4 and the DTM trophy for GT4 style cars in Germany, and he will be a man to watch as he's ahead of Carlo Tamburini, the reigning Italian GT runner-up, and on his outside the younger of the Hesmans brothers, Loris Hesmans, who's raced in that NASCAR Euro Series. He's raced in Clio's, the Audi TT Cup, Blancpain Sprint we've seen him in, and GT World Challenge Europe. So there's a lot of experience at the pointy end of this grid, and at the top level, yes, you've made the point there are AMs, but even the AMs are a cut above sort of club racing AMs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at where Philippe Pret qualified. He's the first of the AMs, but he's not behind all of the pros. He was in the mix there. And so we're not expecting all of those pro cars to disappear up the road. There is, 7 of them. They should be one long line as the teams down in the paddock listen and watch us as their feeds. The cars are going to start on the F1 start grid. So first corner is La Source. We saw drama there yesterday for race 1, but we've got the pros in the cars for race 2. Here we go, much faster across the stripe than we were yesterday. And Pierre Caffer under pressure from Matto Homola, who looks to the inside. That's actually compromised Homola. And round the outside goes a KTM. Round the outside goes a Maserati. And in fact, somehow Homola holds on, but he's got a lot of squabbling going on behind. On ball with Heisemans, down towards Eau Rouge for the first time.
So Loris Hesmans then in the Mercedes 5th as he flicks through Eau Rouge for the first time. Brave stuff by Reinhard Koffler on the outside line. He got roughed up a little bit. He's gone across the curb there, coming up Radion. So Pierre Caffer leads the way. Simon Birch right on his tail and looking for a way by Hesmans with all the grunt of the Mercedes. Goes up to fourth on the outside line, though. Look, Simon Birch in that red and white KTM. They skim mirrors. Who's the last of the late breakers? It is going to be Caffer on the inside line, and there's another little run between them. That puts Caffer off the racetrack. Back on again. He won't keep the lead necessarily because they're still leaning on each other, and Simon Birch is absolutely determined he is going to be in the lead by the end of this lap. Pierre Caffer has other ideas. Hesmans to the outside there of Carlo Tamburini. Deep into the corner goes Caffer. He's left the door open, but Birch can't capitalise.
What a great start from Simon Birch. He's made up a couple of positions from where he started. Matto Homola's dropped a couple of positions. He got really roughed up into turn one, but it was a kind of his own doing, trying to attack Pierre Caffer. It's Simon Birch who's been doing the attacking for half the lap. Caffer's been so strong in his defence because he knows what he needs to do. He needs to build such a huge advantage before he hands over to his partner in crime.
So Pierre Caffer leads the way. The field streaming its way now up through the pit path. There, number 90 KTM, Dominic Albert starting in the second of the Razzoon More Than Racing entries. So Simon Birch didn't crack, as it were, to get the lead. Didn't crack Pierre Caffer, but he's not given up yet. Koffler looking for a way to get back ahead of Hesmans as they sprint through Paul Frere for the first time and power their way up now towards Blanchimont, thence to the chicane. Behind the Reinhard Koffler KTM there is Jörg Wiebahn's Mercedes, and yesterday's winners, Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini, in third place, but not yet on the tail of the top two. Lead gap has stretched.
Homola's dropped down to 7th there on lap 1, so that really has not been a very good start. As looking to the inside is Loris Huysmans on the Lamborghini. No space through for third position, that is. Tamburini in third right now. Homola drops down to 8th. I think he was wide through Blanchimont in the back of shot.
I wonder if he'd got a repeat of whatever the problem was that stopped them yesterday. That car retired from both races at Misano, retired yesterday, and to lose as much time on the opening lap, I just wonder whether there might still be something niggling little problem with that car. Pierre Caffer led at the end of lap 1 by 9/10 of a second, so he's looking good here up front with Simon Birch second, and you see that little smoke coming off both of those leading KTMs. We had it all the way through yesterday's races. They load up through the corner and the bodywork grinds against the ground. You're on board with Loris Hesmans. Remember how much grunt this has in a straight line. Here he comes to have a go at Carlo Tamburini to the outside line. Job done, and he's almost on the back of Birch's KTM.
There's nothing that anybody can do about the Mercedes in a straight line, but it does lose about 2 seconds to our stiffer GT2 cars in the middle sector. So this is where it's a bit of a handful for Loris. Down the hill, through the fiddly bits. You can see how soft the Mercedes is. And here is the start then, once again. There is, in the center of the shot, in front of us to the left-hand side, Matto Homola. He tries to go around the outside. He gets squeezed between two Maseratis. That drops him down to 4th position. And 5th now, because now Huysmans tries to get past. And Huysmans gets past going into Eau Rouge, so you have to come out the throttle, and then you lose all the momentum up the Kemmel Straight as well. I can see exactly how that's not panned out very well for Homola, who actually had to go off the circuit as well.
But Pierre Caffer hanging on to that race lead, and then you've got Loris Hesmans on his toes, and with all the grunt of the Mercedes, and we saw it in yesterday's race, that part of the circuit just plays into the hands of the Mercedes AMG, and Hesmans ahead of the KTM of Reinhard Koffler. At that point, you had the two leaders touching, and they weren't done yet, because there was another little rub here, going down towards the exit of Les Combes, but Pierre Caffer stood his ground. Oh, no, you don't, he says.
There was very strong driving, but I have to say that KTM was pretty much alongside, wasn't it? It was wheel-to-wheel contact, and in the end Birch having to back out of it and Caffer being the stronger of the two, but it was very much on. It was a good attempt to try and get past. I wonder how much the contact has damaged the KTM. Is down the inside further back. Looks like Philippe Perret is giving the squeeze to Spina.
Yeah.
And that's all the way down in 9th position, held on to the pace.
Different classes, Am, Pret, Pro-Am, Spina. So, in a sense, Philippe Pret could let him go, but what he doesn't want to do is lose track position and fall back into the clutches of Alexandre Leroy, because right now, Philippe Pret third within Am. Jörg Wiebahn is the Am leader from Dominic Albert. Replay here of very wide going Dominic Albert there, rattling it over the curb and the gravel, but he's survived the experience, but it did cost him a place. Or 2, maybe, because there is Pret squeezing up the inside. Blimey.
Well, that's why Pret was slow going into the chicane then. massively compromised going into Blanchimont. I hope there's no lasting damage to that car, because there was a lot of rubbing.
This lot have consumed a lot of espresso this morning on the current evidence. This is a really toey start of the race, isn't it? We've had lots of rubbing, lots of leaning on each other, really hard racing as Lawrence Tomlinson's Ginetta came into view there. Down to Bruxelles, race leading group, possibly bunching up again. Remember, we're talking about Pierre Caffer needing to get as far up the road as he can for the benefit of Michael Doppelmayr. Well, he's only pulled out a second thus far. Yeah,
and it was pulled out on lap 2, wasn't it? So it hasn't changed on that last lap. A 2:21.0 for Caffer. And basically matched by Birch on that last lap. Here is the AM leader, the 888. Viban shares this with Stéphane Perrin, who's done a lot of laps around Spa-Francorchamps. A strong AM as a teammate. And they have a decent advantage over Olber for the moment.
That car was 8th in the race yesterday, 4th in class, so it doesn't have to carry any extra time in the pits. It will be the regulation stop only, and an AM category win for them would be the first of the year. You had Viban, very experienced and successful former GT4 racer, and the second driver of that car is going to be Stéphane Perrin. That is the second of the AMs. Bit of damage. Dominic Albert, remember, he's been over the curb already. Now, if this were a British Touring Car Championship race under the new regulations, that would be a black and orange flag into the pits. You've got to rectify it, but we'll see for how long that car carries on before the scrutineers get a bit antsy about it. Carlo Tamburini, in the meantime, 4th now, yesterday's winner. This isn't great because that car, don't forget, has to serve an extra 10 seconds and it's dropping down the order.
And Tamburini was a little bit messy on the first couple of laps out of the pits, if you remember, in stint 2 of race 1.
Yeah.
Still looks a little bit messy as Pret goes wide. Is that a tyre gone? That will be from the rubbing. Yes, it is. Right front tyre has gone flat. And remember, that was rubbing against the side of a KTM a lap ago.
And it couldn't have happened in a worse place because he's gone past the pits. He can't get in, and so Philippe Pret is going to have to, well, I think that's the end of the race, isn't it? Because to limp 7 kilometres like that, A, you might do so much damage, B, you'd lose so much time. That's effectively game over for Philippe Pret. Through goes Hezemans, another place gain. That's on Simon Birch. The Mercedes up into second place. Once again, it is the Kemmel Straight. I might have to rename it Mercedes Straight the way this is going, because it just plays into the hands of that car, doesn't it? The front engine, all grunt Mercedes AMG. Well, Pret's come into the endurance pits. Not entirely sure you're meant to be able to sort of circumnavigate half the pit lane, but he's in because he knows he's got no other chance of staying in the race.
Well, better to do that than to really destroy the Maserati with that 7 kilometres of driving around. Here is the tyre letting go in the back of shot, but it's the rubbing that occurred a lap before, which is the cause, I think.
Yes, he was up alongside the KTM, wasn't he, up towards Blanchimont, and as you rightly say, they lent on each other. The tyre has finally gone, and so it's not a failure as such, it's a legacy of contact, it's tyre damage. There you've got Loris Hezemans, who now is up into second place, hunting down Pierre Caffer. I said the gap was a second a little while ago, it's down to 6/10. There's the new tyre going on the Maserati, but we'll see what comes of him halving the pit lane, if you like. This is the second. Birch coming back at the Mercedes through the twiddly bits. The KTM's got the advantage, and then when you get into a straight line and the Mercedes AMG can use all of its power, that gap will stretch.
And this is where exactly that happens. Accelerating it out of karting. Curve pull Frere isn't really a braking zone, it's just an acceleration zone at the speed they're going, and then flat out. It's not flat out through Blanchimont. That's what we've been hearing, the GT3 cars easy flat, but when we went on board with Hezemans yesterday, he couldn't go flat out through Blanchimont. A little bit of a lift, but either way, still the grunt helping him stretch away from the KTM. The gap to Caffer, 2.2 seconds, and that's going to change as they come across the stripe now, and it's gone down to 2.1, and it's only going to get closer as we get to Le Combe next time by, because it's all Mercedes track right now.
Absolutely so, and that means that the lead gap, which is up to 2 seconds, may well come down by the end of the next sector point, because that will be Mercedes friendly, if you like. As Ben says, this part of the circuit is all about grunt. It's also partly to do with how heavy your right foot is and how brave you are coming up through Eau Rouge and Radion. And Loris Hezemans is from a good racing family, so he'll lack nothing in that department. Pierre Caffer there is the race leader, but look behind, because the gap between Caffer and Hezemans to the eye is slightly reduced. They get towards Le Combe, they come into the braking zone, they turn right, it's down to 1.3. So a demon first sector, the best of anybody in the race for Loris Hezemans.
0.8 of a second found just in that first sector alone. As you say, I'm not sure Eau Rouge would be flat out in a GT2 car either if Blanchemont's not.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of bravery and cleanliness through there to carry your speed all the way up the Kemmel Straight. On board now through the middle sector. And this is where Loris has to work a lot harder.
And it's where Caffer is getting away as well. This is where the Audi can play to its strengths through the corners. It's also where Caffer can use so many more years of experience of driving around Spa and knowing the nuances of the track and the cars that he has raced here. That is Reinhard Koffler, still on the back of Carlo Tamburini, but not yet being able to find a way by. Powering their way now out of Pouhon and the run up towards Piff-Paff. A little flash of the lights from Koffler. More in hope, I think, of dislodging Tamburini than in anticipation. And he's also way more up the curb, Koffler there.
Interesting to speak to some of the GT3 drivers yesterday. When they first came here at the start of the week, they almost consider it a new track, such as the changes for the tarmac, especially around here. This is where it was quite bumpy before. They had to compromise the car setup to deal with those bumps around karting. And then they come here and it's billiard table smooth. They can stiffen up the car. They can make the car work harder and better in some of the other areas. And so that's partly why we've seen such a massive change. We've got a new lap record in GT3 yesterday in Superpole. A 16-year record broken, thanks mainly to the tarmac.
Koffler into the chicane, still chasing Tamburini then. This is for 4th and 5th places. The leading AM is still behind them. He'll be into shot shortly. Jörg Wiebahn there in the Mercedes. KTM versus Audi here with Dominic Olbert with witness marks up the side, courtesy of Philippe Pret, fending off the Audi in the hands of Alfio Spina over the timing line. They now go, and Alfio Spina's the outside line. The cars similar liveries, but the distinctive Audi shape in the background and that distinctive Audi engine note as well, heralding the arrival of Alfio Spina.
Oh, he's right under the rear wing here. It's going to be a brave move to go side by side at the bottom of the hill, but he'll just have to try and line him up through Eau Rouge, carry the momentum, use as much circuit as you dare. And that was nice from the Audi. Now, how do they compare on the straight? The flapping bodywork on the left-hand side won't exactly help the aerodynamics of the KTM, and on the second phase, very much, the Audi has the aerodynamic advantage, but not quite enough. He has to go around the outside. And they come and makes it happen.
Good move, that, by Alfio Spina. New to GT2, new to the team, new to the car, learning fast. And although we got a bit concerned about that car on the installation lap, all is good. Place gain then, so that puts Spina up into 8th place. And the gap between 2nd and 3rd is growing. Interesting, though, that Tamburini can't go after them. He's sort of plateaued at the moment, and he can't really shake off Koffler, but he can't do anything about the KTM up the road. That Maserati not looking as good as it did yesterday.
How much is he looking in his mirrors, though? How much is he concerned and being distracted by the KTM? You're not supposed to. Always look forward, drive your own race, but it's so tempting just to make sure that you don't shut the door on a KTM and then cause damage or get spun around. And we have now lost one car in Philippe Pret. He has not come back out onto circuit. And the incident is under investigation. So just a reminder, that was Dominic Olbert that made the contact at this point of the circuit, shut the door very aggressively. Pret was already alongside, caused the rubbing, which caused the puncture. Pret brought the car into the pits, but hasn't rejoined the race. Still flashing the lights. Those little KTM's effectiveness of the lights are not particularly strong, especially in a day like today. I'm not sure how much it's going to distract the number one. But Koffler is all over Tamburini. Birch with a transponder issue, so he's jumping around on the timing screens a little bit. But I don't know if that's a button or whether he's just constantly on the flasher. Oh, Pret is back out.
Okay. So he's dropped a lap potentially, but he is still going, which is the good news.
I wonder why. I wonder whether then, because he entered the pits at the wrong point, the timing guys don't, because on the timing screens it says he's still in the pits, but he clearly isn't. TV screens do not lie.
No, indeed. And number 90, Dominic Olbert, 5-second time penalty at the pit stop for causing a collision. So the KTM that got involved with Philippe Pret deemed guilty. And so the time penalty comes. That makes his pit stop a little bit longer. As here, you look at Jean-Luc Bobelic ahead of Alexandre Leroy. Now, this is for 3rd within the AMS, and it's changed because Bobelic's Mercedes is now ahead of the Maserati, and it happened thus, Ben.
Not a place where we've seen the Mercedes have good grunt in this short shoot down to turn 1, but he had the inside line, had the apex, nowhere for the 24 to go, and an easy move. And then, of course, he's then got the grunt down the hill, through Eau Rouge, and up the Kemmel Straight, so no way to be able to reply.
Koffler still chasing. Kaffer still leading, and the gap has gone back up again to 2.4 seconds, but that's nowhere near enough to protect Michael Doppelmayr as the field then comes down now into Campus. The Mercedes in the background. Yesterday, the car having suffered a bit of early damage finished 6th. Loris Hesmans will give way to veteran racer Eric de Donker, who was on the grid for the very first BPR race at Paul Ricard, 30 years or so ago, 30 years plus now. There is 98 Mercedes running 2nd. Best lap of the race, Pierre Kaffer. Not surprisingly, perhaps, he did it yesterday as well. And there, up through Blanchimont goes the Mercedes. Dragster-like, isn't it? Not only in its poise, but also in where it can use all of that power.
Here is a replay again of that contact that has caused a 5-second penalty. So Dominic goes wide, comes back onto the circuit, has obviously nowhere near as much momentum, and then shuts the door on Philippe Pret. But Philippe Pret clearly alongside, and then the contact continues for quite a while, and of course the tyre says no. Eventually, it was a lap later that it let go, but unfortunately just after pit in, so Philippe entering the pits halfway, as you're able to do. Well, you're not legally able to do, but physically you're able to do it, and got that tyre change, came back out onto circuit. He is a minute behind Hernandez Ortega, so 16th position and a minute back, but I think he might be a full lap behind, isn't he?
Let's have a quick look at the race order.
Oh, yes, he is, actually. He's in 4th on track, so he's back there.
So there is leader, that's 2nd. Gap back, 3rd. That's Simon Birch. 4th here, Carlo Tamburini. And their 5th is Reinhard Koffler. In 6th place, Jörg Wiebahn. That's your leading AM ahead of Matto Homola. A distant 7th now after his travails on the first lap. 8th, but closing, is Alfio Spina. Looking good now in the Audi. Look how much gap he's pulled over the soon-to-be penalised Dominic Olbert. Then you've got Jean-Luc Beaubelic, way back by his standards, 10th, and 11th, Alexandre Leroy. 12th is Lawrence Tomlinson, new to GT2 this weekend, in 12th place. There he is. His son is racing here as well this weekend in GT4, so it's a family affair. And I've got to say, as a GT2 car, that Ginetta looks really good.
I love the rear arch. It's just slightly wider than you would come to expect from a 55 or even a GT56.
Yeah.
And the spitting flames.
You've raced a Ginetta, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
G40?
Yeah, I owned one.
Oh, good Lord.
Yes, I did, a long time ago. I'd love to see that car in slow-mo with the change down of the gears, because there's spitting flames out of the exhaust in front of the rear wheels. And it kind of reminds me of that Fiat that you see at Goodwood Festival Speed.
The Beast of Turin.
Yes, that's
Duncan
right.
Pittaway's Beast of Turin, the Fiat, yes. Philippe Pret has stayed on the lead lap, but only just. So he is on the lead lap, but he needs a safety car to bring him back into the mix, really, subject to anything that race control may say about the way that he came into the pit lane.
Yeah, nothing stated yet on our timing screens. They're doing lots of track limits, of course, and announcing track limit warnings. They have to announce them before then they add up to a black and white flag, and then eventually there will be a time penalty.
But the quirky thing about Philippe Pret is, even though his lap times are being recorded, so is his pit time.
Yeah, exactly.
The pit clock is still counting, so that's really confused the system.
Well, that confused me.
There over the line, Tamburini versus Koffler. This has been teed up for lap after lap, hasn't it? But Koffler still can't find a way past that Maserati.
Just as a bit of admin, having come into the pits to change that tyre, Philippe Pret does still have a minimum pit stop time, even though it is outside of the window. So he would have needed to be stationary for 97 seconds, even if it was much quicker to change that tyre. But here, with a long circuit of Spa, it hasn't put him a lap down. Although everything, these guys are being very well behaved, and we haven't had a safety car in yesterday's race. Haven't needed it. And touch wood, it's nice. It's really nice not to have an interrupted race.
Well, it is, and it's also good because we've had some good racing, and yet it hasn't been silly. The driving standards in this are good. So many of the drivers have got a lot of experience. We've gone through some of the CVs and where they've come from. These aren't racing novices, and the championship catering for experienced drivers that want to do a short program of racing. It's a lot of track time in a weekend, 6 events a year, and you have free practice ×2, you've got qualifying ×2, you've got the racing ×2, and so you can have 3 days at the track, lots of track time in nice cars at great venues, and be back at your desk on Monday to pay for it all.
And I love the fact that the characteristics of driving these GT2 cars very similar to GT4, so you can learn your craft in GT4 at a lower speed, although in the European GT4 series there's so many cars that actually can be quite chaotic, and then you can progress into a higher powered GT2 car and come and join this grid.
Jörg Wiebahn there on the limit, wasn't he? The Mercedes stepping out of line as the back wagged a little bit. Matto Homola coming back at him in that KTM. The dark horse in a way here could well be Alfio Spina, couldn't it? Because having got up past the KTM a little while back of Dominic Olbert, he is charging, having been released. And now the more mileage he does, the more confident he's getting.
Pit window is open, but don't expect any of the Pro-Am cars to come in anytime soon. Contact! Oh dear, and round goes Leroy. Tamburini, sorry.
It is. Yesterday's winner turned around by Koffler down at the chicane. That's going to get looked at, and worse for Tamburini. He stalled it, so he's lost 1 place, he's lost 2, he's lost 3, he's lost 4 now. So that little battle pack has gone by, and he lost the place anyway to Koffler. He's rejoined, but that's a big loss of time. Let's see it all over again.
Well, it just wasn't quite enough space for Koffler to put his nose down the inside. You need to be more alongside than that. And around he goes.
In super slow-mo, look at that front left wheel. You can see the judder in it as it's going in the direction against travel. It's a great shot. That really is fantastic, that super slow-mo shot. That's Pierre Caffer. That's the race leader. And he is leading now by 4 seconds. So he's been slowly but surely building the gap. But yes, it's going to be very difficult, nay, impossible to protect that into stint 2. That is Stefano Costatini for Luca Piri Racing. He will replace Alfio Spina.
Interesting that Caffer doesn't have anywhere near the kind of ultimate sort of dominance that we see at some races. Heisman's is only 0.1 seconds slower on that last lap. Here is a replay again, different angle this time. Dives to the inside, and yeah, it looks very much alongside at that point. As we pan, I think that Tabby would have seen him. Almost actually more alongside before the braking zone than in the braking zone itself, and he tried to go later on the brakes to shut the door.
Pit stops then are cycling through. So you've got Boblik for Vanelay. There is Gilles Vanelay. Sunny's on. Uber cool, Gilles Vanelay. That is Stefano Costatini, and Alexandre Leroy will, in the black and yellow Maserati, stay in the pit lane, stay in the car for a further 10 seconds, because he is not only a soloist but was in the top 3 yesterday. Jean-Luc Boblik out, Gilles Vanelay to get in. Pierre Caffer stays out for as long as possible in this 10-minute window.
And this is where he's going to make the real damage. The next 10 minutes where the AMS and the pit window opens, he should be able to extend that advantage a bit more. Although saying that, Loris is likely to stay in that car as well for the full period, as is Simon, as is Koffler. So 4 seconds perhaps won't extend that much. There are our top 3 equidistant now. 4 seconds separates Caffer from Heismans, and Birch actually another 3 back.
Of course, just going back to that Carlo Tamburini incident, yesterday's winners, having just lost time, have then got to serve 10 seconds in the pits anyway. So it's really hurt them here.
A bit more contact on the back of the 53. That bumper didn't exist yesterday for most of the race.
That's Spina in. Alfio Spina to give way to Stefano Costatini.
And that's interesting, because that is a Pro-Am car, but Spina coming in quite early to hand over to Costatini, who is the Am in the car.
Notionally, but a very experienced Am.
Yes.
Years and years and years of racing experience. Not necessarily in Audis, more in Ferraris. But Spina is the less experienced driver. So in terms of where they're graded, that's one conversation. But in terms of experience, yeah, Costatini, I think, would be the person you'd rely on. There is Alexandre Leroy's Maserati ready to go. He's done a bit of historic racing before coming to GT2 this year. Gilles Vanelay gets away right in front of the Ginetta, although that camera angle probably foreshortens it a bit. Lawrence Tomlinson is in. He will stay in the car, solo entry.
You might be wondering why the door is open for a single driver entry. They do have to get out of the car, walk around the car, and then get back in and get bolted back into the car. So that's the reason why the driver, and I suppose a little bit of airflow as well will help. But that's why they had the door open. And there was a bit of using the fists as a hammer to, I don't know what they were knocking on the front right corner, but clearly a bit of damage on that car.
So Pierre Caffer still 4 seconds clear of Loris Hezemans. There is Sedi Samini and Klaus Angerhofer's KTM. Klaus Angerhofer to give way to Sedi Samini. Carlo Tamburini is in. there's not much hurry from Leonardo Guarini from Lego to walk across, but he knows this is a time pit stop, so it's not like you'd see in the 24 hours where the changes have to be done as quickly as possible.
I think the panic is a little bit getting the car up on the jacks and maybe a damage to the rear right wheel, because they've got the gun on that and it looks like they might be changing the rear right. So perhaps that explains why. I suppose that was the one that was assaulted, wasn't it?
Correct.
By the KTM. So perhaps sidewall damage and it needs to be changed.
And if they know there's been a puncture on Philippe Pret's car, ran out of the same stable, they'll want to change that after contact just to be on the safe side, won't they? We're not saying there's necessarily a tyre issue, but they just want to be absolutely secure. Check the tyre pressures at the front as well.
It wasn't checking. It was there was a lot of air coming out of that.
That's Dominic Olbert, who might be spilling fluid. Look at the... He is definitely spilling fluid on that left rear corner. So that, remember, was involved with Philippe Pret early on, and that's going to be a black and orange flag, isn't it? It might only be some sort of coolant rather than oil. It doesn't look oily, but the scrutineers will not like that.
I wonder what's back there that would be broken. I suppose they have side radiators in the KTMs, which is unlike most of these other cars.
Costatini under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, and also under investigation for speeding in the pit lane is Lawrence Tomlinson. So right now,
easy to do going down the hill. If the gun's at the bottom of the hill, it's the car. You almost need to be on the brakes all the way down. Such is the steepness of the pit lane.
There is the excuse given to Lawrence Tomlinson in anticipation. Yeah. Right, away goes Tamburini.
I just saw the guy.
Right.
He was walking away, actually, but at the bottom of this pit lane was a man with a fluorescent jacket on with a gun, and he was... He will be checking manually, as the police do on the motorway, or not on the motorway, on the main road, and he was just down on the left-hand side behind that tree, as per police.
We're talking speed gun here, rather than anything military.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Should be more specific, shouldn't I?
Just to clarify, Ben. So the Lamborghini blasts out then of Hernandez Ortega, Jose Alfredo Hernandez Ortega, new to GT2, but we've seen him in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And also out behind there is Sedi Samini in the KTM. We've still got pit stops to be taken, though, by the leading, what, half dozen?
That's an interesting message. Car 88 under investigation for speeding in the pit lane twice. So does that mean he's only been in the pits once? So that means he's been caught on both pit lanes.
I would say so, top pits and bottom pits, yeah. Sedi Samini, though, here, desperate for a place, isn't he? That's for 15th as Pierre Caffer comes in this time. So that's your leader down the pit road. And I should imagine Loris Hezemans will be in it, because otherwise they're going to run out of time, aren't they? So Pierre Caffer will give way to Michael Doppelmayr. There is the official on the left-hand side. You're riding with Loris Hezemans, who looks at the back of the Audi. The gap was a bit greater than that on the track, so Hezemans, presumably, a later braker coming into the pit lane. They will go through the hairpin at La Source and then make their way down the hill. It is going to be Eric Dodonka to take over the Mercedes. It is going to be Michael Doppelmayr to take over that leading Audi. And Simon Birch has come in as well out of third place. Also in has come Reinhard Koffler from fourth. It's going to be a really interesting second stint now. Different drivers, cars will be at different paces. The pit stop times are going to shuffle the order a little bit. But Dodonka is ready to take over 98. That's a spin from Sedi Samini. Contact between Koffler and Tamburini is going to be investigated after the race. Sedi Samini, after his spin, gets going again. He carries on. The race leaders then into the pit lane. And let's just have a quick look at how Samini lost it. It was all self-induced, that. Round it goes. On his outlap as well. So getting himself up to speed, just being caught out. As there is the Mercedes stopping. And the Audi then, Michael Doppelmayr will get in. Pierre Caffer will get out. And that, therefore, means the Audi will be decaffeinated.
Very good. Lawrence Tomlinson has the speeding in the pit lane penalty announced already.
A drive-through.
Yeah, that's heavy. If you think of the contact was only 5 seconds, speeding in the pit lane, a drive-through penalty, and a long pit lane means a drive-through is really, what, a minute and a half, 2 minutes?
Don't do it.
Well, yes, fair enough, but then don't knock somebody else off of the circuit as well for a little 5-second penalty.
Well, there is...
Triple 8 under. I'll tell you what, the guy with his gun is obviously, he's vigilant this morning.
Absolutely.
Speeding gun.
Pierre Caffer puts Michael Doppelmayr into the car. Michael Doppelmayr set to go. No extra time to be served. Bit of a traffic jam at the Razun team as Thomas Anderson gets around the Dennis Liebel KTM.
You might be wondering why KTM's in the F1 pits and the rest of them are in the endurance pits. Completely their choice. They are able to put themselves wherever they want to be. It might be that KTM are actually positioned in a different part of the paddock, and therefore it's easier for them to get to the F1 pits than it is to the bottom pits and the endurance, which has a bar on it this year, on the roof of it.
Yeah. So I'm told. Yes. Right, off goes Michael Doppelmayr.
It'd be a great place. There it is. You can see it'd be a great place to watch the 24-hour race. Watching the wheel go round, watching the concert in front. It's Robin Schulz who will be playing at 11 o'clock, and then obviously the fireworks around 11:30. Biggest ever, I'm told.
And so much effort this year put in for the centenary event, but for the fans. You know, there are exhibitions of the history of the event. As you say, there are the concerts, there's the firework display. There's a train for the first time as well to get people around Spa. There's a little train that will take you to different vantage points rather than you have to trek on foot. So a fan-friendly to 24 Hours of Spa this year. It's a really great atmosphere.
And €50 entry for the week.
At all?
Yeah.
Not bad.
€80 if you want to get into the paddock, but a €50 entry ticket allows you to enter on any given day. So it might be if you just come for one day, €50, but if you want to stay for then 2 or 3 days, the ticket. Brilliant value, absolutely amazing value.
And the track action is actually non-stop.
Well, exactly.
From Thursday morning onwards. And if you're here Wednesday, you've got the parade to enjoy. There have been pit walks as well in the evening, which have all been busy. And there, off the road, goes Stefano Costatini, loses a place to Petrolisa, and he's off the road because he's got a problem.
Oh, no.
It conked out on him yesterday, and it's done it again. So right at the start of his stint, Stefano Costatini has to park the Audi. It has not been his weekend.
This car stopped at the start of the race as well. No damage to it, and it just seems to have conked out. Now, a fresh restart, a hard restart, as we saw at the start of the race, seemed to cure whatever issue it was, and it was able to then complete its stint without issue apart from being turned around. Was that the car got turned around? No, it wasn't, was it?
No, that was involved in battles, but it survived.
And Spina was getting up to speed at the end of his stint, wasn't he?
And this is a battle brewing up for the race lead. So this is Michael Doppelmayr versus Eric de Doncker. And look at the closing speed of the Mercedes. De Doncker for the lead by the chicane. What do you reckon? Because as they come out of Blanchimont, this gap is coming down and down and down. Doppelmayr off the road and back on again. Is there a gap on the inside? No, but de Doncker right round the outside. Job done. Great move. Eric de Doncker, with many, many years of experience inside that car, fights the Mercedes out of the chicane. But we've got a new race leader.
De Donker's under investigation for speeding in the pit lane, though, as seemingly most of the cars are. Number 2 has pitted outside of the window, so that's Philippe Pret, who's missed the pit window, and no reason for doing that because he's a single driver entry. That's just a miscalculation from the team.
Yeah.
And he will, usually that's not a huge penalty.
I was going to say 30 seconds.
Oh, really?
And it might be greater given the lap length. I think it would be a drive-through converted into a time penalty post-race. But we'll wait and see. We'll wait for confirmation. But Eric de Doncker, as you say, that car, whether it was Eric going out or Hesemann's going in, we'll wait and see. But that car, as you say, under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. Pierre Caffer now, Michael Doppelmayr in second. And as Michael Doppelmayr is at the wheel, that means Pierre Caffer is standing in the pit lane and can talk to Antonia.
Pierre, you did a brilliant job in the first stint. Is it a bit frustrating watching the car go backwards?
No, not at all. It's a teamwork and a team effort. And from that point, Michael is doing his best, and I know he's doing his best. And we try to improve each race. So here's a long track. It's fast corners here. And yeah, I think he can manage this very well. And I'm really looking forward for the result. And so far my stint, I'm quite happy with the car. I'm pleased with the team. So everything went well. And I'm really looking forward for the next race.
Of course, he's doing a brilliant job so far and over the rest of the season as well. What's your hopes looking forward?
Well, it's Spa. Spa, it's a really nice track. And Spa, with these weather conditions, I heard that tonight should be some rain predicted. So luckily our race is right now, because in one of the other championships which we are driving, there was 1 week only rain. And now to enjoy Spa in these weather conditions is pretty nice.
Would you say that Spa completely transforms in the rain? Is it a lot less enjoyable, or is it just different?
No, it's just different. It's different feelings in Eau Rouge and Blanchimont and everywhere else. So you need to be very careful. And especially right now, I don't know, with the new asphalt, is it slippery? Is it a lot of grippy? In the dry conditions, it's very grippy. We have seen this in GT3 times and also here in the GT2. So from that point, the cars are pretty fast at the minute.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed for the drivers tonight about the rain. Thank you.
It's an interesting topic of discussion, the rain coming potentially at some point during the 24-hour race. It's something that the British GT guys experienced last weekend, the rain on the new tarmac, but the new tarmac was insanely new at that point. It had only been finished a couple of days before, and it was still sweating, so it was still, oil was still sitting on the surface, which meant obviously it was hellish when the oil and water mixed. How much that's cleaned up over the last week with so much running will remain to be seen, but it could be that the new parts of the circuit are very, very slick if rain falls. It's not going to fall in GT2. The sun is still out. The clouds are starting to form, though. The temperature's certainly not rising viciously like we saw yesterday. Track temperature is now at 20 degrees, similar to the air temperature. Here is Stéphane Perrin aboard the Mercedes. Perrin with plenty of 24-hour experience in 5th position, best of the AM categories by quite a margin, actually. Perrin leads Vannelet by a couple of positions and about 10 seconds. He's 4 seconds back from Anderson in the KTM. Perrin missing I think it must be 2 years ago now, missing a whole year of racing from an accident here in Spa. And at that time, I think he was T-boned by a Mercedes. Dominic Albert with damage to the left rear. Remember, he got contact with Pret, and we saw the fluid coming out of the rear left. The tape has kept the bodywork on that car, but unfortunately, somewhere in there is obviously a cooling pipe going to the engine, rear-engined, of course, this machine, and that has put some fluid on the racetrack and unfortunately emptied it from the car. So that is actually our first retirement. 20 seconds pit stop penalty, 20-second stop-go penalty, blimey, for Philippe Pret. So having already had a puncture, entered the pits halfway through the pit lane, he's now got a penalty for pitting outside the window and is suffered even more. Oh, down the inside, Anderson on Doppelmayr. So that's a change for 3rd position. And Doppelmayr drops to 4th. De Donker leads Koch, leads Anderson now. The top 3 in Pro-Am, and in the race itself, 4 seconds between De Donker and Koch at the head of the field. But who is the faster? Koch is a lot faster on that last lap, 3 seconds. So we could see another change for the lead in a lap or two's time. And it all really got mixed up by that success time that they have to take in pit lane. A reminder that some pit stops were longer than others because of their success in the previous races. And fastest of anyone through the first sector is Gilles Vannelet, would you believe, in the Mercedes. 38.1, the first sector. And here is the 87 car. Now, Perrin on Doppelmayr. These two know each other. They've raced quite a lot in 24-hour races together. And Doppelmayr leaves the door open round the outside. Not quite enough space for Perrin to get through there. I'll try and go round the outside at Speaker's Corner, or Jackie X. And he managed to do that. So he moves himself up to 4th overall then. But most importantly, he needs to get a move on because there's Gilles Vannelet. And Vannelet is closing in. He's got to get past Petrolisa. But he's closing in on Doppelmayr and Perrin. And that is for class. That is for the class lead in AM. 3rd in AM is Pascal Gibon in another of the Mercedes, ahead of Leroy, but only by 1 second, so there's plenty to watch out for in this GT2 race. With 10 minutes remaining, look at this, 4 cars on the same bit of the circuit, and lots of potential for change. Side by side, this is for the lead then. De Doncker on the inside, round the outside goes Koch, and it was easy pickings. Eric De Doncker missing out, but now we know how good the Mercedes is on the straighter sections of this Spa-Francorchamps circuit, so he should be able to draw back onto the tail of Koch. And if he can get himself ahead by Lecombe, then he can at least hassle Koch for the remainder of the lap as we switch our attention further back. And Tamburini trying to go around the, well, now inside of the 89 of Petrolisa. Gorini, that would be up to 6th position. It's still side by side. Gorini in the Maserati to the right. Lisa on the inside, and Lisa holds on for the moment, but the switchback is a possibility here. And the extra grunt down the hill towards Eau Rouge. And actually the Maserati may complete that move before the corner. Yes, he does. So that's Gorini up to 5th, Lisa down to 6th.
Yeah, Gorini having to recover from that longer pit stop, isn't he? But doing a good job of it as they work now, lap 17 of the race. And Martin Koch up front. The margin he's got over Eric De Doncker now 1 second, and last time around was over 4 seconds a lap quicker, so that's going to stretch, I think. What's Gilles Vannelet up to? Class lead, 4th place, and his lap times in the Mercedes are fractionally quicker than Thomas Anderson ahead, so an overall podium might be on the cards here for the Mercedes with 8 minutes to go. Drive-through penalties are coming as well. One for Costatini, who we'd seen parked anyway, and the other for the 2nd placed car of De Doncker.
Yeah, and that is going to drop them way, way down, because 4th down to 8th are only separated by 3 seconds as we were watching that little battle pack. And it's, well, drive-through penalties, I reckon, about 1.5 minutes. So a huge penalty for speeding in pit lane today. And that's a shame for Eric De Doncker. Had his time in the sun, leading the race for the first part of his stint. Koch has got past. There's only a gap of a second between them because the Mercedes was so strong in the first sector of the lap, but nearly 3 seconds back. Now, 53 got a pit lane speed limit as well?
No, he's going to gain, isn't he, I think, because of the penalties ahead. So Pascal Gibon is going to get past Michael Doppelmayr on pure pace, and then with the penalties for De Doncker and, well, not Costatini, because he's out of the race effectively, but he ought to gain at least 1 place via a penalty and 1 place because of pure speed.
888 is Stefan Perrin. They've also got a penalty.
Right.
And they're 7th.
And also, Philippe Pret has a stop and go of 20 seconds for stopping out of the window. So
He's actually done it just now.
Right, so that car was way back anyway, but just about insult to injury, really. It's not his race, is it? Also, having said that 53 here of Pascal Gibon will benefit, he's going to have to work hard to keep Alexandre Leroy at bay, because that Maserati is looking very, very racy behind as well, isn't it? And
that is for class position. Vannelet is not penalised right now, so he leads that class and should stay there.
Flapping bodywork on the front of the Maserati. They've taped it up at the bottom, but it's the top of that panel that's starting to flap. Have another look when it comes towards us. There, meantime, is Thomas Anderson. I said he was being caught by Gilles Vannelet. 6 minutes to go, and this now is the fight for 3rd place overall. Vannelet leading in AM, but an outright place could well be gained here.
And don't forget, once De Doncker takes his penalty, this will be the battle for 2nd overall. Anderson, therefore, a KTM 1-2 on the cards. Gorini 3rd in class. The lights flash as they go down to Bruxelles. Not the easiest place to make a move down there. And indeed, for the moment, it isn't completed. And Vannelet can just be careful with this one. He doesn't need to fight it because it says 2 different categories here, Pro-Am versus Am. But the Mercedes strong out of Jackie Eak's corner. He's got the inside line for Double Gauche and gets the move done before the braking zone and into the first of the 2 left-hand apexes. And now he can sprint away.
Eric De Doncker being reminded that they've got to do this drive-through. So the car that is 2nd is going to fall, and so Vannelet, having just gained 3rd on the road, is going to gain 2nd when that penalty is served. Assuming that De Doncker takes it, because if you don't and you argue about it later, you may find yourself in hotter water.
It's interesting that so many were done for speeding in the pit lane. Suggests that Oh, a little bit wide, dipping the wheel into the gravel and spitting up the gravel between Campus and Curve Paul Frere. It's getting bumpier and bumpier, this new tarmac, isn't it, as the week's gone on?
Bit of rubber junk there, look, bouncing across the road. As through goes number 1 then, Leonardo Gorini, still hunting down Thomas Anderson. The way that Vanderlei caught and passed him suggests here that it's going to be relatively easy for Gorini to do the same, isn't it, by the end of the race? Thomas Anderson, who was in the Le Mans Cup last year. There, looking on. Loris Hesmans as the drivers come over the timing line.
Yeah, to Donker in the pits.
Yeah, so this is to serve the penalty.
So that means the Anderson-Gorini battle moves to second in class. And
Gorini's got a problem. He's got a puncture because the left rear has gone pop and Leonardo Gorini limps around. He's going to have to do what Pret did and sort of halve the pit lane just to get it back to the team. But disaster then for Leonardo Gorini. He just gained a place at the expense of Eric de Donker, and a punctured Pirelli brings him down the pit lane. And that's curious because I don't think we'd seen him really getting involved in contact. Meantime, this is in Am. You've got Michael Doppelmayr about to be passed by Pascal Gébon and Alexandre Leroy as they come now into La Source. So they gain a place on the Audi. They're going to gain a place on the Maserati as well.
Yeah, and they're still fighting all a loose bonnet there for Leroy in the Maserati.
That was the one I was talking about a little earlier. It was flapping away. They taped up the bottom of it. The smoke's coming from the punctured tyre of the Maserati. Down the pit road they come. And so you've got the Maserati stationary, left rear needing to be changed. Up on the jacks it goes. And this is how he did it, potentially just riding it out wide through the gravel and onto the curbing.
Yeah, it's soft there. Instantly you can see it's soft.
Yeah.
The curb made of concrete, obviously the gravel loose, and there is an edge to the concrete that can easily cut a tyre if you dip too far across it. That classic kind of rally puncture that you just try and take too much of the exterior of the circuit. That's a shame, though, because that was brewing to be a nice little battle for class honours.
Carlo Tamburini very frustrated about all of that, having been a race winner this season. But it does illustrates it's not over until it's over. Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler then on target for a second win of the season. They had a win in Italy. They're going to win in Belgium as well. We've got 2 minutes and 32 on the clock. A flying lap is a 2:23. They could afford to back this off given the pace they've got. They're coming up to the line now, 2:22. This might just fit to the last lap. And if the team is savvy, they get on the radio to Martin Koch and tell him just to ease the pace so they don't have to squeeze another lap out of it.
It will be that puncture will be great news for Koch and the 8-1-2 squad, because they were just a couple of points back from the lead of the championship, from the number 1 that had taken victory in race 1 in all 3 of our rounds so far. We move into the second half of the season after Spa, but having such a disadvantage, being at the tail of the field now, that Gorini and the number 1 Maserati, it means there'll be a big chunk of lost points to the KTM 8-1-2 squad. And therefore, I think it should, by the end of this race, favour KTM as they leave as championship leaders here.
So, after contact, Philippe Pret and a punctured tyre, so frustrated he's down in 15th place. And there, Alexandre Leroy still hunting down Pascal Gébon, but he's not been able to get close enough to have a go. The pit entry for car 1 is under investigation. Interesting that that's being looked at, but 2 isn't, because it was the same move. And that, in the gravel, is Stéphane Perrin, and that is down at Campus. He's on effectively his last lap, but I can't see him coming out of there.
What a shame. We just about got a bit of momentum going there. If he can be careful. There we go.
Oh, wow.
The grunt of the Mercedes wins again.
Except he's now going to wait for a gap in the traffic. And it bogs down, but he's got it out. Fair play. Well done, Stefan. He's going against the flow of traffic. And to turn it round, he's going to go back into the gravel. I don't think race control is going to like him having gone against the traffic. But amazingly enough, he's able to drive across the gravel and back onto the circuit.
Wow. It's not the point of gravel.
Extraordinary. Absolutely. How did he get there? Let's find out. Here he comes.
Oh, was he assaulted by the KTM? Yes, he was.
That's quite a whack, isn't it, to dislodge a Mercedes? That allows Gorini to go by as well. And Seti Samani, having had a spin, gets delayed in that as well. Right, this is Martin Koch. He's got 22 seconds before he gets to the checkered flag.
He hasn't backed off.
No, although he's being held up ever so slightly by that Mercedes that's just rejoined. But the team now looking at this, 10 seconds to go. As of now, they need to bark onto the radio. Slow, slow, slow.
What? He could well get to the line before the time runs out. There's the checkered flag being prepared, and the time just runs out now. And the checkered flag goes out, and that means the 812 squad of Koch and Koffler take victory in race 2 here in Spa. But it could have easily been another lap.
That was timed to perfection. 50 minutes and 6/10.
Wow.
That's absolutely dream, isn't it? Second place, Gilles Vanelay, Jean-Luc Bobelic after a great effort. They're your AM winners as well in Mercedes number 87. And then for third place, Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch will come through after one of their better showings of the season. And in the end, fourth, after a rather unpromising start, Petra Lisa and Matto Homola. So it didn't start well for them, but a good enough recovery, I think it's fair to say.
And Gibbon has held on from the attack from Leroy. They've been together through the whole of this second stint, but after not finishing yesterday, thanks to damage, good to see the 53 car come towards the line and Pascal Gibbon, Christophe Boré take second spot in the AM category. Leroy on his own third, but with, of course, all of that penalties that he had to take in the pits. Doppelmayr looks like he may have held on to seventh, but that's more due to the fact that the rest of the field have penalties or have spun around than anything else.
Well, this is Eric de Doncker, and he's on his way up towards the line, and Doppelmayr hasn't yet got to the beam.
Oh, okay.
So de Doncker is going to be seventh, is he?
Yeah.
Yes, and Michael Doppelmayr eighth behind him at the end.
Good recovery.
Indeed so, but as Michael Doppelmayr was saying before the race started, the idea is to have maximum fun. Mission accomplished, but a great drive by Reinhard Koffler and Martin Koch. I mean, again, that was a car in the first stint that struggled to make progress, but it shows how quickly things can turn around.
And that's the beauty of these two-driver races, especially when you have Pro-Am lineups, how different the two drivers are. We kind of sometimes forget, we talk so much about the cars being different, but all the drivers are different as well. Yeah. And they perform at different levels. And so one driver much faster than the other, and that provides very entertaining racing action for us to watch.
So Jean-Luc Bobelic and Gilles Vanelay, and they are the AM winners. Gilles Vanelay, like yesterday, being very, very impressive. He sort of got quicker and quicker as his stint went on yesterday, and he's got it up to second overall today. Race result, a win for Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler from Gilles Vanelay and Jean-Luc Bobelic, the winners in AM. Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch third. Petra Lisa, Matto Homola come next from Pascal Gibbon and Christophe Boré, and Alexandre Leroy seventh. Then those with problems or penalties, Eric de Doncker and Loris Hesman seventh in the end from Michael Doppelmayr and Pierre Caffer. Then Alfredo Hernandez Ortega, clear of the punctured Maserati of Leonardo Morini and Carlo Tamburini. After a couple of dramas, Teddy Sarmini with Klaus Angerhofer 11th, Lawrence Tomlinson 12th after a penalty. Dramas, and therefore a very distant 13th for Costantini and Spina, and a lap down, Perrin and Vibarn. Philippe Pret likewise, and we lost the Liebel Albert to KTM with damage. So that's going to throw the championship up in the air, isn't it? But the KTM coming out on top in, yet again, a race with a sting in the tail.
As I say, halfway through the championship, Ricard, Misano and Spa are now completed. And we have 3 more rounds supporting the Endurance Championship of GT3, the GT World Challenge, and that is in Hockenheim in a couple of weeks' time. Then they go to Monza in October, which again will be a resurfaced circuit to be tested. It will not be as fresh as Spa because Formula One will have gone there beforehand. And then we finish our season at a circuit that probably could do with a resurface, having watched Formula One the other day. Barcelona, which, if you remember, the tarmac is almost grey now, light grey, such as it bleaching from the sun. And next weekend here, just as in case the Marshals didn't have enough of 24-hour race, they've got a 25-hour race to Marshall. And that is the what's on the T-shirt of that Marshall in front of us.
Marshall with his fag there as well. He's early morning constitutional. He's not a fire marshal, that's okay. So
that reminds us of the
flags and boards only.
You've probably seen the Nürburgring 24-hour race, part of the IGTC. In practice, a car setting itself alight and then the driver getting out and instantly lighting up a cigarette, watching his car burn.
A different world. Right, the drivers then at the old podium on top of the endurance pits. That's where today they're going to have the ceremony. So team representatives required, and they get a hat as well. Make sure that they are properly adorned before they climb up the stairs. The old pit buildings. Talking yesterday in the GT4 race that we had about which is the better place to be. Many like that top pit because it's on a level, the garages are bigger. Some engineers love being in these bottom pits because for the 24 hours when you've got tyre warmers, you put the tyres on and the car's straight onto the track. You're losing less temperature by driving down the pit lane. So from an engineering standpoint, they want to be in the bottom pits and really at pit out.
But the mechanics do not want to be in any of these garages down here because they are awkward to work in. They're all at different levels and they're very, very narrow.
So Martin Koch brings the car in, and the KTM bodywork, you push it up, you push it forward, take off the steering wheel. It's not the work of a moment getting out of one of these cars, but the more you do it, the more dignity you find. And Martin Koch, a delighted man, says, "Where are you, Reini?" Reinhard Koffler. There you go, that's your winning combination. And Martin Koch, who's not been racing for that long, doing a very good job now. Winner's cap provided for Martin Koch. Do we assume from the Tamiya sponsorship that there's going to be a scale model of a KTM crossbow before much longer, a GT2 style one? Helmet will be off in a moment, and Antonio Rankin is standing by, camera ready, interviewer ready, and as soon as a balaclava is off, our race winners, Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler, can reflect on a very good drive and another victory. Let's go down to the pit lane and hear from our race winners.
Oh, Martin, Reini, that was incredible. Your second win of the season, and in Spa, no less.
Oh, it's amazing to win in Spa and well, in front of this crowd and this amazing racetrack. It's pretty cool. So I told you yesterday, I hope we can win this race, and so we did.
Reini, how much does it mean?
Yeah, there's no better place than Spa to win a race in the GT2 European Series. Martin did a stunning job. The team was on point. So now it's time to celebrate. Thank you.
Yeah, go celebrate. Congrats, guys.
Reinhard Koffler, a happy man. Drivers get together, celebrate as there is the KTM in super slow-mo. The chicane with those relatively high curbs. They've been tipping one or two cars off kilter over the course of the weekend, but of course there was the incident that had with number one Maserati, so whether anything's going to come of that we'll have to wait and see, because they got together, didn't they, early on, Reinhard Koffler on Carlo Tamburini, and turned it around. So see whether they can come back from that little bit of damage on the side of the car as well. The puncture that befell number one was on the opposite side, so it wasn't the legacy of that contact. Now, our AM winners, Jean-Luc Bobelic, Gilles Vanelay, are next, ready to talk to Antonia.
Guys, last time in race 2 you DNF'd, and now you're winning.
Yes, fantastic. You make a good job, and the car is perfect. And good job together. The car was very, very perfect. Jean-Luc in starting was very safe with the tires, and the car for me was exceptional.
And an exceptional win. Congratulations. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Two very happy men, and Jean-Luc Bobelic, Gilles Vanelay taking honours then in the AM category. And the Mercedes AMG GT2. We've seen how much grunt it's got. And Vanelay, just like yesterday, Ben, really doing a good job in his stint. Very experienced driver. Absolutely,
and that's a picture of exactly what GT2 series is all about.
Yeah.
Two gentleman drivers absolutely loving what they're doing. We've seen Jean-Luc Bobelic in this paddock for a good couple of years in Pro-Am in GT4 last year, and a little bit here in GT2 as well. But to have two gentlemen like that just beaming is exactly what it's all about.
Let's look at the highlights of race 2 for GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli, with a great start putting Pierre Canter into the lead as Reinhard Koffler's KTM got roughed up a little bit, hung out to dry on the outside line. A demon getaway though by Simon Birch. He was determined to grab the advantage. Bit of contact with Pierre Canter coming up to Le Combe, but that wasn't the end of it because they rubbed again the other side. Then Dominic Olbert ran wide. That delayed his KTM, and Philippe Pret committed to a move on the inside, but the door was closed by Olbert. Contact was the result, damage to the KTM and a puncture for the Maserati as Loris Hezemans used all of the grunt of the Mercedes in a straight line to go powering past on the run up the hill. Contact put Carlo Tamburini around. He was assaulted by Reinhard Koffler. And another spin for KTM this time. Seti Sarmini losing it on his outlap after the pit window. When the pit stops came, Pierre Caffer gave way to Michael Doppelmayr, and that car at a different pace started to drop down the order on track. It gave Eric Dodonka the race lead, but Dodonka would be done for speeding in the pit lane, so that cost the Mercedes a whole heap of time late race, and ultimately dropped the car way back down into 7th spot. Into the lead, though, came Martin Koch in the 8-1-2 KTM, despite its earlier skirmish with the Maserati. And Martin Koch putting himself clear into the leaders. Then on the penultimate lap, around went treble 8. Stefan Perrin tagged into a spin by Seti Sarmini, but he got out of the gravel as up to the checkered flag, and a second win of the year came Martin Koch, who with Reinhard Koffler wins in GT2 at Spa. So looking down on the forests, and we await the drivers on the podium. Track activity comes thick and fast at Spa. A whole host of McLarens making their way out on track next for their racing, but the old pits is where attention is going to be focused. Of course, there are the grandstands opposite that part of the track as well. Spa able to not only use those 2 pit lanes, but I think still even 2 race controls, because you've got the old one in the tower of this part of the circuit. So to the podium they come, and they're Petr Liza and Mato Homola taking 3rd place within Pro-Am. Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch take 2nd in Pro-Am, and they were 3rd overall. And then for the top step of the podium, the race winners here at Spa will be Reinhard Koffler and Martin Koch, victorious not just for KTM, but for the MZR Motorsport Centrum Ried team. Out they come, Martin Koch, there, Reinhard Koffler, and they take honours here in race 2 for the GT2 European Series powered by Pirelli at Spa.
And that's probably your new championship leaders as well. Florian Moring from Fanatec, handing out one-handed the trophies to the GT2 series. But with the #1 car scoring so poorly after its issues, I'm sure the 812 is going to go to Hockenheim as championship leaders in that Pro-Am category. Well, it's been a lovely weekend of action from our Fanatec GT2 European Series. Equal largest ever grid. And as we move on to Hockenheim, perhaps more cars to compete. Thank you very much for joining us. And make sure you find the next stream, because there's plenty of racing from Spa to come. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.